Welcome, everybody, to our July program for AFP of Greater Austin. I'm Kristen Campbell, and I'm the incoming president for our chapter. Amy Jackson is on vacation this week, so I'm filling in as your leader for the day, and I'm so excited that you guys are all here joining us for a really special conversation about something that I know a lot of us are trying to figure out, particularly in the middle of this pandemic. So thank you for being here. I just have a few quick announcements to share with everybody. We wanted to let everybody know that our board nomination process is now open, and those nominations are due by July 31st. And this is such a great way for you to deepen your engagement with our chapter, really connect with your peers in fundraising, and just do a lot of learning. My board service has been so meaningful, and I just encourage you guys to ask questions. Please feel free to reach out to anybody on the board if you are interested. We also have a couple of scholarships available for membership and for a CFRE certification if you're interested in that. So please check out those opportunities online, again, at our website. A couple of exciting announcements. One is we will be doing a roundtable discussion on August the 13th. Madge Vasquez, who is the CEO of Mission Capital, and I will be co-hosting a discussion about Edgar Villanueva's book called Decolonizing Wealth. This is going to be just a really great opportunity to start learning about some of those, I think, harmful frameworks that exist in philanthropy in our field, and it'll be just a really, I think, exciting and energizing conversation. So mark your calendars, August 13th. We do not have the link yet up on the website, but that will be coming in the next couple of days. So go ahead and mark your calendar for that. And then I also just want to encourage people to go ahead and sign up for our one-day conference, which is scheduled on August the 21st. There are tons of great speakers already lined up. You can check out more on that lineup on our website as well. And it's very affordable. It's $60 for members, $75 for non-members. So we encourage everybody to participate in that. Heather Parsons and her team have done such an amazing job planning what I know will still be a really meaningful experience. Even though we can't be together in person, there's going to be tons of great content that you won't want to miss. And on that note, I'm going to kick it over to Heather Parsons, who is our VP of Programming for the AFP board, and she's going to tell us more about our topic for the day.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Kristen. And I just have to give Taylor Kidd, who is the chair of the our AFP one-day conference. He has led a team that has put together this, the programming, and you're in for a real treat. So definitely register as soon as you can for that. But today we also have a treat in Hannah Noakes with Magnify Impact. Some of y'all may recognize Hannah. She's been in Austin for quite some time, and I've actually known Hannah for about 20 years. So that's kind of pretty impressive. But so I worked with Hannah, or I knew Hannah when she was at Leadership Austin, working for doing their alumni and donor relations work. But most recently, she was the she led corporate social responsibility for Easy Core, which is a $1 billion publicly traded company. She'll tell you more about her experience today in her presentation today. But in a nutshell, she launched employee engagement programs for 5,000 global employees. That's impressive. That included volunteerism, board leadership with nonprofit partners, and she raised $450,000 annually for the company's foundation. So she's got a fundraising background as well. Currently, Hannah consults with companies to scale their corporate social responsibility strategies, including creative, effective partnerships with nonprofit organizations. Some of her current clients include Texas Mutual, Easy Core, SailPoint, Amplify Credit Union, and National Instruments. So I am looking forward to hearing from you, Hannah, and I'll turn it over to you. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather and Kristen. Thank you for having me today. It's a joy for me to be here. As Heather mentioned, I worked in development for Leadership Austin several years ago and used to love, one of the highlights was attending AFP meetings. I wish that I could see all your faces because I'm sure that I know many of you in the virtual room. But yes, I am now the co-founder of Magnify Impact, and companies turn their social programs into their greatest tool for engaging their customers and employees. So I did lead development for Leadership Austin for 5 years until 2011, when I returned to my corporate roots to build out the charitable foundation and employee engagement structure for Easy Corp, which, as Heather mentioned, is a global company headquartered here in Austin with 5,000 employees. And a couple of years ago, I left there to start my own consultancy because I really wanted to be able to help lots of companies that didn't have someone like me on staff to be able to create effective social responsibility strategies that allowed them to make the biggest impact in their community, but also drive value back to their business. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means here. So we are now Magnify Impact. We work with lots of companies here in Austin. Heather mentioned some of the names, and several other cities. And we also work with so thank you so much for having me here today. I also founded the Corporate Engagement Council, which is a public-private partnership between the Austin business community and the City of Austin to share best practices and collaborate together. Okay, the audio is not working. Let's see. Can you hear me at all, or it looks like we're getting a little bit of feedback? I'm not sure.
Hey, Hannah, we're hearing a little bit of feedback, and you seem to be cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay. Well.
Although right now you sound good. Okay.
Well, let me know if it happens again, if we may have to switch over to another medium if it gets too bad. How's it now?
Sounds good right now.
Okay, good. So when I transitioned from being a nonprofit fundraising professional to a corporate donor, it became apparent that the two worlds could really partner together more effectively if the lines of communication could be more open. Companies that want to have a positive impact in the world cannot do it without their nonprofit partners. And yet there seems to be so much mystery and intrigue about the way that the two parties can work together. So I've even had some development directors tell me, we don't have a corporate fundraising strategy because it's just too frustrating and too challenging, too much work. And I get it, but if we're going to see the change in our community that we want to see, it's really going to take all of us. So I'd love to help see if we can cultivate some deeper understanding, and if it improves the relationship between your organization and just one of your corporate donors, then it will be well worth it. So let me click over to my presentation here. There we go. So with that in mind, today's presentation is meant to do two things. Give you an understanding of corporate social responsibility trends, particularly how CSR is a growth driver for companies, not just an altruistic pursuit and a business imperative. The second thing I'd like to do today is to share how effective corporate social responsibility strategies are built, and a simple formula that changes everything. And lastly, I'd like to share some tips and tricks to make your corporate relationships more fruitful. Now, just a terminology thing, I'm sure most of you are familiar, but corporate social responsibility, or CSR, is a very common term. You'll also hear community engagement, community affairs, social responsibility, social impact. For the purposes of today's presentation, I'll most likely use CSR throughout, but they're all really very similar terms. It's about how a company, corporate citizenship is another very common one, how a company makes a positive impact in their operating communities. I can only begin to imagine how challenging the last few months have been for you in your roles. But I can also tell you that what we're seeing is that business leaders are increasingly receptive to taking a leadership position in their communities, really in ways that we've never seen before. So they absolutely need your partnership to accomplish their goals in the community. So let's try to see if we can figure out together how to become an unstoppable force for good. So before we get into understanding some CSR trends, I want to share with you the results of a very informal poll that I took among friends who work in nonprofit development in Austin. I asked the question, what is your biggest challenge in working with corporations to get support for your mission? And the responses really fell into three categories. The first is getting to the decision maker, finding the right person in the company to talk to about the opportunity. The second was understanding what motivates companies to want to partner with an organization or to want to invest in certain issues in the community. And the third is understanding the process. Many people express that there's not a clear one-size-fits-all process for applying for funding or volunteering. It doesn't feel very transparent. And I want to tell you right now that I don't have an answer to these questions. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution here because every company is vastly different. So what I want you to be able to do after today's presentation is to identify the most likely candidates for supporting your mission, where you can create a mutually beneficial partnership and pitch to them in a way that's more likely to be accepted, but where you can create a long-lasting, mutually beneficial and sustainable relationship. It was incredible to me to learn that 40% of the world's trade now takes place within multinational corporations. So what that means is that businesses can be even more powerful than governments at creating solutions to the world's most challenging problems. In recent years, employees, consumers, and investors are increasingly letting their preferences be known by voting with their dollars and through their actions that they want to do business with thoughtful corporate citizens. This slide reflects some of the examples of some of the world's most recognizable brands and how they're responding to this call. And these examples are just from 2020, from the Super Bowl, from some of the racial injustice advertising that you can see here, responding to the pandemic. And business as usual has shifted. more recently, you'll see that the actual purpose of the corporation has been adjusted. In August 2019, the CEO Roundtable, which is made up of 181 CEOs of large publicly traded companies, came together and redefined the purpose of the corporation so that the shareholder value was no longer the primary and sole purpose of corporations, but benefiting all stakeholders. Because of these type of discussions, we're seeing that investors are following suit. In fact, 83% of investors are more inclined to invest in the stock of a company well known for its social impact. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, which is the largest institutional investor in the world, wrote a letter to his portfolio CEOs in 2018, asking them to consider their organization's purpose and impact on society beyond financial returns. And he actually reiterated and deepened that commitment in 2019. And all of this focus on purpose and impact has led really strong corporate leaders to step out and crystallize or reframe their company's reason for being. In fact, 76% of companies have updated their purpose statements in the last 5 years. Just moving away. So what is this purpose thing anyway? For us, purpose is the enduring character of an organization. What you'll be known for 100 years from now, or your legacy. Some examples of strong purpose statements that you would recognize these brands are Walt Disney. Their purpose is to make people happy. 3M, their purpose statement is to solve unsolved problems innovatively. And Merck, to preserve and improve human life. So these purpose statements bring up questions for leaders to wrestle with. How do the decisions that you make today in your business affect how the world will look 100 years from now? So what is the impetus for all this focus on purpose? Well, there's a lot of different elements to this, but one of the things that we see most clearly as really what brought this on is the rise of social technology, which has created this unprecedented voice and ability for consumers to organize themselves around shared values. Consumers really hold the power to both reward brands that align with their values and punish those that don't. So, for example, recent studies show 86% of consumers think that business should place equal weight on society's interests as their own business interests. And as the slide highlights here, a study by Cohn Porter Novelli in 2018 revealed that 77% of Americans feel a stronger emotional bond to brands that communicate a clear purpose. For example, Unilever, their purpose-driven brands like Ben & Jerry's, Vaseline, Seventh Generation, and Dove are growing 69% than the rest of the brands in their portfolio. So more than ever, companies are deepening their commitment to purpose-driven brands. Consumers are deepening their commitment to purpose-driven brands and act as advocates for these brands, which is an amazing marketing opportunity for the corporations because they're not having to do all the marketing. The word of mouth that is taking place within their customer base is doing most of the marketing for them. Another major component of why this focus on purpose and impact has become so strong is because in today's interconnected and interdependent world, employees are increasingly demanding that the businesses that they work for and their suppliers take part in creating solutions to the world's most pressing problems. Employees, especially millennials, who will be 75% of the global workforce by 2025, carefully weigh the values of the cultures of the companies that they want to work for. The 2018 Deloitte Millennial Survey found that 88% of millennials believe that employees should play a vital role in solving global issues. And 86% of millennials say that business success should be measured by more than profitability. And then you've got the Gen Zers that are entering the global consumer base and workforce in droves. They make up 40% of the global consumer base this year in 2020. They demand flexibility in the workforce, transparency in the marketplace, and want companies to address specifically, by and large, issues of global poverty, climate change, and human rights. So what we're seeing from all of this data is that it highlights that corporations are powerful and have a critical role in solving global problems. Employees and stakeholders want to participate with meaningful businesses. And technology has sparked this revolution in which this expectation is shared by consumers, employees, and other stakeholders for businesses to be responsible citizens. So now that I've set the stage, I think it's pretty clear that expectations are extremely high for companies to be part of creating solutions to these tough problems. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Most companies don't know what the heck they're doing, and they don't know where to start when it comes to actually making the impact that these stakeholders are demanding. Most companies are in reactive mode. So they've got a leadership team member or employees who are asking for support of their pet cause, perhaps, or they just respond really to whomever asks. And, with the mounting pressure on businesses to have an impact in the community, we see that companies are often spending more, but they're not really able to communicate a deeper impact that's more effective. So if you're the recipient from a donor that is in that reactive mode, that's great while it lasts, but it's not strategic. And so when times get tough, often those relationships are the first thing to get cut. And some of you that are listening today might be in that situation right now. And with the increasing competition for the same donor dollars, I want you to be more strategic so that you can not be one of the ones that is the first to get cut. So I want to teach you a simple framework that we use for companies to help them get more focused, less scattered, and help them be a better partner for your organization. Even if your corporate prospect isn't working within this framework or isn't quite as focused or organized, that's okay. Because by understanding this, you can present partnership opportunities in a way that are much more targeted to your corporate prospect than what some people do today, which is, hey, we're doing amazing work. Do you want to support it? So I want to share with you a simple formula that we teach companies to create social impact that sticks. And that is purpose plus unique capabilities or superpowers yields impact. So to break it down, purpose. Why does the company exist? So if you're a business leader, we're going to, as we're trying to teach our clients this formula, we're going to ask you as a business leader, what will you be known for 100 years from now?
What's your company's legacy? Another example of a great purpose statement that I love is by Kellogg, nourishing families so they can flourish and thrive. And then unique capabilities or superpower. What does the company have to offer the community? What are your unique superpowers, your knowledge, your products, services, skills, expertise, and services? So for example, Warby Parker, always a great impact brand. They donate not only glasses, but provide vision screenings globally. That expertise and the product, the eyeglasses, is one of their superpowers. For a local Austin example, Texas Mutual, who is a client of ours, leverages their expertise in workers' comp insurance to improve workplace safety outcomes throughout the state of Texas. And they're doing a lot in workforce development. And then the third piece of the formula, impact. How can you bring along your customers and your employees and other stakeholders, your suppliers, local communities, etc., on the journey to make an impact on your business and the community? Stakeholders are a company's ultimate source of value, and they'll help provide their additional superpowers to make the company's vision for a stronger community a reality. And one of the most important stakeholders in that equation is their nonprofit partners. So I want to talk a little bit more about stakeholders, because this is really important as you're thinking about how you can best partner with corporations. An understanding of a company's stakeholders is really critical, because this is where all the value comes from for the company. Profitability ultimately comes from loyal employees, engaged customers who sing your praises and share that positive word of mouth about your product, engaged investors, local government who give you the license to operate, local communities, your suppliers. When you engage these parties through a deeper sense of a bigger contribution that you're making together in the world, then they return value to you with that heightened loyalty and greater word of mouth. So this stakeholder wheel, as we call it, is really critical to understanding how you can help your companies create value through the work that they're doing in the community. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that specifically in a minute. But just a couple of examples of stakeholder activation through community impact. HEB, we all know the amazing stories of how HEB has responded in so many crises in recent months. They've deepened many of their supplier relationships through partnering together to respond to crisis. Harvey would be a great example of that. And now those relationships are stronger than ever. One of their superpowers is access to food and supplies that's so needed during a disaster. But they also have the superpower of the distribution channels and the fact that they're able to get those goods to the right spot quickly. So really great example of stakeholder activation through community impacts. Another example, another one of our clients, Amplify Credit Union, they regularly share information with their 60,000 members about their community partnerships and invite those members to participate in bringing in food and supplies to their branches to support those partners. And through that collaboration with their members, they have seen a major uptick in customer engagement scores through those efforts. They also provide financial literacy training, which is one of their superpowers. And the access that they have to those 60,000 members and the foot traffic in their store would be another superpower. So lots of really great examples with those two companies. Okay, so to put this all together, there's a lot here on this chart, but I want to walk you through it because I think it will really help put everything together that we've discussed around purpose, around superpowers and stakeholders, and how we coach companies to really look at all of these elements to find the right alignment between their own profit and purpose. So when we help companies determine what they should be focusing on or how they should invest their time, talent, and treasure, we start with their purpose and values always. A company's purpose and values are the lens by which all companies should make their decisions. And we've seen a lot of that in recent months about companies really going back to their purpose statement as they were making major decisions, such as a commitment to not lay off employees during COVID. So once we've clarified with them or recentered with them on their purpose and values, then we look at the profit side of this map. We dig into how they make their money. What are their primary revenue growth opportunities? What strategic challenges do they have on the horizon? Do they have branding or reputation issues? How do they motivate and develop their team? And what stakeholder relationships can they advance? We look together with them at their superpowers. What are their products, services, skills, knowledge, expertise that they can bring to the table? What other assets might they be able to bring to the table, whether it's financial assets or employees in a volunteer force? And then we consider with them what stakeholder relationships they need to strengthen. So this circle on the bottom here is another version of what I showed you earlier. And every company's stakeholder circle will look a little bit different. And then here on the right side, once we've considered all of those elements, then we can get to where we're actually talking about what their focus areas should be, what impact makes the most sense for them to pursue given their purpose, given their unique capabilities, given their stakeholder relationships. So once we have a better understanding of all of those pieces, then we can start looking at what they're most passionate about solving in the community and how they can do that with the assets that they have to bring to the table. So what does this all mean for you? So what we're teaching here is for companies that want to be the best in class in their CSR programs. But of course, not all of your corporate prospects will be at that stage yet. However, you can really use the framework that I just described as a position yourself to be more strategic as a strong partner to these companies. It starts with doing your homework and asking the right questions. I want you to think a little bit like a management consultant when you're in prospect conversations with a company. By understanding what makes the company tick and how you can be part of their success story, you can set yourself apart and be able to enter into more mutually beneficial partnerships that last. So when you're assessing a new corporate partnership prospect or looking to deepen relationships with your existing partners, I have 3 tips for you. The first is what I call partner on purpose. What is the stated purpose of the organization and the values of that company? and how do they align with your organization? A couple of examples of purpose statements that I think naturally jump out at me where you could definitely find alignment are Barclays. Their purpose statement is, our common purpose is to help people achieve their ambitions. ING, their statement is, empowering people to stay a step ahead in life and in business. So I think when you look at an organization's purpose statements, look at their values, look at the mission, those kinds of things, look for alignment, look for ways that you're both trying to address some of the same issues. And then the second tip is synchronize your superpowers. So spend some time researching or in a conversation with your corporate prospect, understanding the business model, understanding the opportunities that are on the horizon for the company and the challenges that they face. Ask questions like, what are your primary revenue streams? What new innovations are on the horizon? What are your biggest hurdles to growth? Think about things like talent pipeline, diversity, regulatory hurdles. These are all things that you can absolutely address through your partnership. What reputation challenges do they face? What new geography are they looking to move into? And then identify with them their superpowers. What unique skills, knowledge, products, services, what other assets do they have to bring to the table? Financial assets, volunteer force. So consider how you can match up their expertise to the needs of your clients, their products to a community need, their pro bono services to a group of recipients. Get creative, think beyond money, because what we're looking for here is a long-lasting, multifaceted partnership that might start with a pro bono donation of products and then over time really move into a significant relationship where they're giving multi-year funding. That would be the ultimate goal, right? So the third tip here is supercharging your stakeholder relationships. So I recommend that when you're talking with a corporate donor prospect, that you actually map out that stakeholder circle on your own and you can confirm it with them. Define who their stakeholders actually are. That may include and will likely include customers and employees, may include suppliers, may include local communities, governmental organizations, nonprofits. Consider where there may be challenges or opportunities in that circle, and you can have the conversation with them about, tell me more about what it means for you to move into a new operating community. And, what we worked with a company a while back that was really challenged when they moved into a new city because the local community didn't necessarily want them to move in at first until they really understood some of the good that they could bring to the community. So they needed to learn to lead more with that and to do more in those local markets. So again, get creative. What can you offer each of the elements of that stakeholder map that would be helpful to the company? Some examples could be some kind of a point of sale, a charitable campaign for a retail company that might help drive store traffic. Another example would be volunteer opportunities in-house for a company that has a call center or perhaps bank tellers. That's a huge need where many companies can't let their employees leave to volunteer and are really looking for partners who can offer that opportunity in-house. Another huge need, by the way, and I hear this all the time, is for companies to have, well, when we're able to get together in person again, to have large groups of people volunteer together. There are not very many organizations that can accept large groups of employees to volunteer at once. So if that's something that you can offer, then definitely lead with that. Another example could be strong social media visibility for a company that perhaps doesn't have that, but perhaps they're really looking to retain and engage their young employees. So all of these ideas are ways to position yourself in a unique and strategic way to the company that you want to work with. And it really starts in that initial conversation and asking them some of these questions and just being curious and thinking like a management consultant, so that in these conversations, you're not just presenting the good work that you do. That's absolutely critical, but you're also trying to dig in and figure out some of the things that you could offer that might be unique and would really help the company in its growth trajectory. So before we close, and can take questions, I had promised to provide kind of a fun list of 5 ways you might be turning off your corporate donors. And this is just some tips that I've come up with, over the years of having been in the corporate donor seat, and prior to that, having been in the development seat. And they may not apply to everybody, but I thought that they were kind of fun, so I wanted to share them with you. So the first one is going straight to the CEO. In a corporation, there are so many different layers of approval processes and who is the right person to go to for pitching or opportunities for partnership and for support. And some organizations are, go straight to the CEO and just kind of hammer the CEO and send lots of letters and lots of emails. And in my experience, those often get just pushed off to someone else in the organization, and sometimes turn off the CEO and say, gosh, this organization won't leave me alone. We're definitely not giving them anything. So don't assume that the CEO is always the right place to start. Try to do your homework. What I would recommend is that, again, every company is different, but I think that marketing is usually a really good place to start in terms of who is the right contact for possible support. Second to marketing, I would say corporate communications or public affairs. I would say HR is not usually the best place to start in my experience, but I would definitely start with marketing leadership, and sometimes getting that next level champion. So not the CMO or the CEO, but going to, say, the vice president of marketing or director of marketing, or director of corporate comms, or even director of HR, if you decide to go that route, can be better than starting from the top, because they get so many requests and they're so busy that often those just go into the circular file. The second tip is, of course, not saying thank you. And I know none of you watching this today are guilty of this, but I have to tell you that unfortunately I did see a lot of this when I was in a corporate donor role. Organizations that really never said thank you, or kind of sent just a form letter. I did have a couple of instances with organizations that sent a thank you note that also included another donation appeal. And again, I know no one in this room would ever do, in this virtual room would ever do that. But I will say that sometimes, and this goes for all communications, sometimes we think we have appropriately communicated, and what do they say, 7, 9 times people need to hear the same message. I would just encourage you to always go a little bit overboard. Notes from board members are always really, really well received, and just lots of excitement and enthusiasm makes the corporate donor feel so good that they want to do it again. So just definitely make sure that you're going a little bit overboard on saying thank you, to make sure that that message really gets through, because sometimes, you know, your corporate donor is really busy and may not see your first thank you. So make sure you do it over the top. The third tip is, or the third way you might be turning off your corporate donor, is piling on the value. And this is an interesting one. I think that what I've experienced and seen with a lot of other corporate donors is that well-meaning nonprofits will really want to give the corporation as much value as possible for a donation or a sponsorship. Extra gala tickets, lots of signage, lots of different ways to tell them thank you. And unfortunately, sometimes those create a lot of work on the part of the donor that is already extremely busy. And sometimes they just want to say, I can't fill the gala seats. I can't design an ad for you, or whatever it is. And they just want to give the contribution, and they, you know, feel really good about that. But if you're creating extra work for the donor in giving them value, sometimes that actually backfires. So if you want to give them more recognition, I would say just do it for them. Don't ask them to create anything, or to give you lots of, you know, a logo in 10 different file versions, or whatever needs to happen to make that a reality. Nickel and diming, this is really kind of the opposite of number 3, which is just think about the bigger picture. You know, sometimes I hear of stories where a corporation will maybe maybe purchase a table sponsorship at a gala or a luncheon for the first time, and they're really excited about it, and they're looking forward to bringing as many of their executives as they can, and they might need an 11th seat, and the nonprofit, you know, wants to charge them for that 11th seat, or, you know, that kind of thing. I don't see this happen too often, but it's just a good encouragement for you to always think about the big picture, and that your interactions with these donors, particularly if they're a first-time donor, you want them to be as positive and easy as possible, and to get as many people aware of your mission and exposed to your work as possible. And that really fits in with number 5, short-sighted thinking. Just, you know, sometimes we are very, and I have been guilty of this too, but we're very focused on our numbers for a particular event, or for a particular time period. And we need to think about the bigger, longer term picture of creating a sustainable relationship with a partner over time. And so even if it means giving away a little bit more up front to help them have a great experience up front, sometimes that's worth doing for the long-term relationship. So I hope that was helpful and kind of fun. It was fun for me to put that list together and think back about my seat as a corporate donor, having also come from a development role such as yourself. That is it for me today. I'm going to leave some time for questions. If you want to reach out to me and talk about how we might be able to help you think through your particular corporate fundraising strategy, we do work with a limited number of nonprofits. We also have worked with probably some of you that are on the call on some strategic board facilitation, updating mission, vision, values, getting boards ready for capital campaigns, and also doing stakeholder interviewing. So I would love to talk talk with you about that. And of course, if any of the corporations that you're currently working with could benefit from some of this strategy and focus work, we'd love to talk with them as well. Please follow me on LinkedIn. I post regularly about the topics that we've discussed today. And so you can get little snippets on a regular basis just to continue to put tools in your toolbox so that you can be the most strategic partner for corporations possible and be able to extend the impact of your mission. Thank you so much for all of your work. And I know that this is a very challenging time, but I hope that this helped a little bit thinking through how you can go forward from here with your corporate partners.
Thank you, Hannah. And imagine we are all in one room and we are all clapping for you and saying thank you for your sharing your knowledge and sharing your wisdom with us today. We do have 2 questions, maybe a couple more. I'll just take them in the order that they came through the chat box. The first one is, given that we can't have large volunteer groups gathering right now, what have you seen as effective engagement strategies for groups of corporate employees during this pandemic?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and frankly, a tough one. I mean, there are, I will say that the companies that we're working with right now are all looking for remote volunteering opportunities and safe in-person volunteering opportunities. So I think if you can be proactive with some of the ways that companies can do things. So I think there's probably a few different categories that I can think of off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's more. But one could be, if they're comfortable with it, can you drop off some supplies or letters or something like that that individuals could maybe come and pick up to do at their home. We've done, for a virtual opportunity, we've had employees write letters to clients of nonprofits, digital letters or in-person letters. So things like that that can be done remotely are really helpful. If you have a platform for virtual mentoring, maybe calls with your clients, those kinds of things, that would be really useful. And then just any kind of opportunities to have exposure to your work right now, even if it's in sort of a different format than we normally would be able to do, I think is really important. And I would be really proactive with offering that to companies, because I guarantee you they're looking for it.
Great, thank you. And our second question comes from Jacqueline, and her question is, I think a lot of times my contact person is an administrative assistant or an employee who happens to be on the charitable giving committee. Is it important to find a person in leadership to address a thank you note to, in addition to the contact person?
So that's a great question, Jacqueline. I would typically, whomever that individual is, if it's the administrative assistant or committee member, is they will share, in my experience, they will often share that note with the leadership team member, but you shouldn't rely on that. So I think that if you can send a note to both, that's great. Back to my tips at the end, don't necessarily assume that that's the CEO. The CEO just gets so much information that they may not even open it. So if possible to, find out who is, and you could even ask your contact, like, do you have an executive champion that I could send a thank you note to? Executive champion would be a good way to say that. They may do that, or you might, they may be a little leery of giving out that name, afraid that you're going to then bombard them with information, which I know you wouldn't do. But what you might say is, I'd like to include a second copy of that thank you note when I send one to you, so that you can pass it on to that individual if I can address it properly.
Great, good thoughts, good insight. Anybody else would like to share a question for Hannah? Getting a lot of kudos and thank yous, Hannah. I'm sure you're seeing the chat as well. Let's see. So there aren't any, I'm not seeing any other questions come through the chat box. So we do have a few minutes. So I'll just remind everybody of the roundtable on August 13th, where we'll be discussing the book Deconstructing Wealth. That will be at noon, and watch for more information on that. Kristen mentioned that at the beginning. And again, our one-day conference on August 22nd or 21st. So please look out for registration information and register as soon as you can. So decolonizing wealth, not deconstructing wealth. Thank you, Kristen. So if anybody doesn't have any other questions, we will say thank you again to Hannah, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.